Today I will be giving a presentation on education in America during the years 1650 through 1900. Education is a part of a broader theme of American history, society, and culture. It is related to those because education comes with the decisions of society and changes as the culture changes. The first period of time we'll be speaking about is the colonial period. During this time, the 13 colonies had been formed by British subjects and European values were still greatly valued. In the colonial era, the education a person received was dependent on their social class, race, and gender. Children born into wealthy families often obtained their schooling from a private tutor. Boys were taught things that would prepare them for higher education in Europe or to run the family estate. As for girls, they were taught things to prepare them to become the mistress of a plantation. They did not have the chance to receive a higher education. The children of poor families often took on apprenticeships because their families could not afford a tutor. Blacks could not receive any form of education unless their masters chose to give them some. As you can see here in this picture, this is a horn book, which was a wooden paddle with the daily lesson and often the Lord's Prayer. The children would wear it around their neck. And here is a family tutor teaching the children in the house. The next era, the Revolutionary War era, was a time when Americans dropped most of their European traditions to grasp onto American beliefs such as liberty for all. This belief and other American ideas were promoted in the education of that time. Still, as in the colonial era, blacks and Native Americans had little opportunity for schooling, and girls still could not receive higher education. Here is the American Revolution era, and the students in this photo are reciting their lessons. The students had to recite their lessons instead of writing them because the paper was expensive. Directly after the Revolutionary War, the early national period began. Throughout this period, European traditions continued to be forgotten in the ways of schooling, such as the importance of religion in education. Religion was no longer an important part of education in America. Franklin and Jefferson helped to shape the education system of this time by beginning public schools that encourage American ideas. Here's the early national period. This shows a teacher with some sort of baton, and during this time corporal punishment was often recommended by the parents. And here is a teacher giving the daily lesson, and the children are reciting their lessons as before in the American Revolution and the colonial era. And often in the classroom or wherever they were learning their schooling, there would be a line where they would stand to recite their lessons. Next, the time period surrounding the Civil War was a time when academies began for both boys and girls. There they would receive a broad and in-depth education. However, this form of education was only obtainable by the elite. As for other social classes, those children attended schools formed by churches or civic-minded citizens. As in prior periods, it was still rare for blacks to obtain an education, although many free blacks did go to school sometimes. Also, public education was still in its infancy, and few states provided it. Here is the Civil War era. This shows an academy for girls. And here is a one-room schoolhouse. And in these one-room schoolhouses, they would teach all ages together at the same time. After the Civil War, the Gilded Age began, in which small schools formed by civic-minded citizens and churches were still common. It was also still very rare for a woman to attend college. However, during this time, major changes in the education system in America began, as the American people realized a government could not work with ignorant people in charge. So people began to pay taxes to fund public education. It was at this time that compulsory attendance laws were passed and schools for training teachers started. Since this was a time of advances in engineering and agriculture, land-grant colleges sprang up to teach students the ways of engineering and agriculture. Since blacks had now received rights, schools for blacks began to become more common. And here is a picture of a group of schoolboys where they were being taught at a public school. As you can see, there was a great deal of change in American education over the years. However, some things remained the same, such as the fact that higher education for women remained rare throughout all the periods described. This fact did not change until later in the 20th century, meaning the years after the Gilded Age or the earlier years of the 20th century. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.